you can control what a patient knows and when they know it, which sounds crazy. If you told me that 10 years ago, I would think, no, you can't do that. But now, yes, you can. You can control what a patient knows and when they know it to make your life easier and to prime them for a better experience.
Welcome back to another episode of the Doctors and Dollars podcast. As always, I'm your host, Nate Crannell. Today, we're talking about efficiency because of preparation. Look, we know doctors are given limited time with each patient, and much of that time is spent giving an Anatomy 101 lesson. But why not have the patient prepared for their visit with their doctor before they even step foot in the clinic? I'm joined today by Dr. David Keynes, founder and CEO of WellPrept, a doctor-to-patient content delivery platform. He's a board-certified urologist who specializes in cancers of the prostate, kidney, and bladder. He is also amongst the most experienced robotic surgeons in the greater Boston area, having trained other surgeons in the technique of both regionally and internationally. Welcome, David.
Thank you so much, Nate. I appreciate it.
What's going well today?
Today, I am in the middle of a very busy day. All the days are busy, but I am enjoying being a doctor because of some of the efficiencies that I've set up. I'm actually having a blast.
You feel like that has come because of the efficiencies you've created. I mean, you probably loved being a doctor when you started,
Yes.
and a lot of doctors say, hey, they lose that over time. You kind of regain that vibrance. Is that true?
Yeah, I am somebody who, for some odd reason, knew that he was going to become a doctor from like age 4. And it's funny. I have some vivid memories of going to the pediatrician, and this doctor is asking me questions. I had a sore throat, something silly. He was asking me all these questions, and my thought bubble was, I better make sure that my answers are correct. Otherwise, he's going to come to the wrong conclusion about what I have. Just crazy. This is like age 4 or 5. And I was amazed that there were people who knew so much that they could help. Now, in retrospect, I was there with strep throat. He didn't need to be Sherlock Holmes to figure that out. But so I fell in love with the idea. I loved being a doctor for the first few years. I fell out of love with it for a number of years, like deeply burnt out. And then I got it back.
Yeah, and I hear that from a lot of physicians. I mean, many that have been on the podcast just tell me, they tell me their story about, what some of the causes of their burnout were, how do they overcome it. A common thing I do hear was that there's just the inefficiency in the time that you get with patients. Like, I could probably speak for you, just like I've spoken for a lot of physicians, like what you enjoy about what you do is that doctor to patient interaction, like the one-on-one conversations. And so when all these different factors and variables within the healthcare system limit the amount of time that you get to do the thing that you love doing, that's where burnout really comes from. And you created WellPrept. And from my understanding, this was something that you kind of designed, in the garage, with that analogy, and brought it out to your own patients, your urology patients, providing them some education materials. Like, what was that point in your career? Was there a pivotal moment or memory that you have where you said, hey, I need to give something to my patients, otherwise I may not be doing this much longer?
Yes, there was a moment. Just to pull on the thread of what you said before that, though, I just want to emphasize, you're absolutely correct. When I am sitting in a room with a patient face to face, even just chatting about what they do for a living and what's going on with their family and what they like to do for hobbies, I love that. It's what I fell in love with as an undergraduate. It's where I feel like I'm doing something important and meaningful and real and tangible, and somebody trusts me to take care of them and give them honest advice. That is as good now as it ever was. But so many other things intrude on that. because, by the way, you also have to document it all and you have to bill it all, and people are interrupting you, and all the layers of crap really
Mm-hmm.
that are piled on us. And because we're such a generous breed, we just say yes to all those extra things until finally we just break down. So the moment that I realized something was wrong in my own particular practice, I was talking to a 68-year-old engineer who had been just given a diagnosis of high risk prostate cancer. And this is a very disarming moment for any person who's faced with their own mortality, potentially a decline in their quality of life. And you can just see the fear in people's eyes. And I remember I'm telling him, I'm explaining prostate cancer, I'm explaining grading, and that's called the Gleason score, and what staging means, and what's the difference between grade and stage. And like many doctors, at this point I have a talk track, and I'm saying this thing that I've said so many times. I can do it with my eyes closed while juggling
Mm-hmm.
knives, So
Mm-hmm. Blindfolded.
blindfolded, exactly. And I'm having this kind of out of body moment as I'm trying to be present with him in the room, but I'm having this sort of meta moment where I'm thinking, like, this is just silly.
Mm-hmm.
Not because it has to be about me, like, not because my own. It sounds selfish to say I was sitting in a room with this patient with cancer thinking about how annoyed I was at having to explain basic concept. That sounds a little off-putting. But to put it in perspective, I don't think it was the best use of time for him,
Mm-hmm.
because, there are ways to provide this information to patients beforehand. Let him consume the basics at least on his own. Why is that better? Because then we can have the conversation that both of us actually want to have, which is, let me explain your biopsy and let's review your MRI or what have you. Let's get to the part that is very specific about you and not anybody else but you. And what are we going to do for your plan? And how does this fit into your life goals?
Mm-hmm.
And that's a conversation that is always going to be a little bit different for every single patient. And it's all about being present in the moment. And I think, just like the conversation that you and I are having right now, I don't know exactly what you're going to say next or what question you're going to ask. And so that's what makes this conversation interesting. That's why it's enjoyable.
Mm-hmm.
And I want to have those kinds of conversations all day because I feel like the kind of doctor that I want to be. So at that moment, I left the room and I thought, God, let me try and figure this out.
Mm-hmm.
So I went online and I found the NCCN, that's the National Comprehensive Cancer Network. They have this PDF and it's written for patients. It's, a committee of experts writes this beautiful guide. It's already out there. I think I put it on like a Google Drive so I could create a link. I turned it into a short link and I said to my secretary, hey, listen, when I get a prostate cancer patient, second opinion, what have you, can you please just have them review this PDF? And not everybody did. Most patients did read it. And when they did, the visits were so much better for the patient and for me. And I tell you, at this point, I'm not thinking I'm going to start a company. I'm just you got to understand, I'm just trying to fix my own broken clinic.
Yeah, you feel like you've gone from a macro level talk track that you've said a million times to now a micro level personal conversation. Like
Exactly.
It was like a spark. Yeah, that's cool.
Exactly. And it was sort of another way of saying that is what felt like a monologue before, where it's just me talking, became a back and forth. And, we will all be patients at some point, if not already. We've all had experiences being a patient. I'm just trying to set up a scenario that I would like to have for myself. We all know that patients are sitting at home. They're going to Google stuff anyway. So why not give them stuff that you already know is good? So then this is right around the time COVID happened. I took it to another level, and some of the other frequent spiels that I have, I recorded a video. I made a little PowerPoint presentation with my webcam, a circle in the corner, and I gave my best version of a few explanations. And I started sending people these YouTube videos beforehand, and it felt like a bit of a gamble when I did that. I thought, geez, am I going to piss people off? Are patients going to be slighted by the fact that, who is this jerk doctor who wants me to watch a video instead of talking to them? And that never happened. The patients sort of seemed to understand. I was giving them some background, like giving them homework to do before class. And it was sort of universal thank yous from everybody. And the visits, I would get to step 6, 7, 8 instead of step 1, 2, and 3 every time. And so it started to take shape this way. And I'm just enjoying taking care of patients again. And I decided to create a little prototype. It was, as you say, working it out in the garage. A simple prototype where I could send one link, and on that page the patients would get to, there'd be a stack of buttons. And I took it a step further, and in my immediate network of urology friends, said to a few people, hey, listen, I've tried this workflow thing, and it's quite possible that I'm crazy, because there's a lot of things that I like that my friends do not like. I'm sort of a tech early adopter personality. So I made these little prototype pages for my friends, and I said, hey, try this out. And most of them had the same reaction. And a few of them went ahead and printed the QR code and put it on their business card of these educational pages. And when they did that, I saw that and I thought, oh my God, I've got to get this in the hands of as many other doctors as I can, because there's this wave of burnout and discontent, and that's going to take several solutions. And I think this might be one of them. And the funny thing is, it's not usually on our mind to involve the patient in preparing for clinic day. Yeah. The doctors are focused on, let me prep my notes and let me collect all the lab values and make sure that I have templates ready and everything. Meanwhile, the patient's sitting at home. Let's involve them.
Just coming in more prepared probably gives them a little peace of mind, right? I think you've put yourself in an advantage. I'm just putting myself in a patient's shoes. If you sent me, all of a sudden you sent me a video to watch of you, let's say it's 15, 20 minutes long, however long it was, of what you would be spending time talking to them, kind of that steps 1, 2, 3. If I'm a patient and I get this video and I watch it, and I just know this from experience, doing this podcast for a long time, working with physician families around the country, like that first time that you meet them, that's super exciting. Granted, in your sense, I'm talking about, balance sheets and retirement planning and stuff like that. You're talking about prostate cancer, so it's a little bit different. But like, that's where you get your excitement. That's where you get your fuel, is from that initial conversation. And so the advantage you've created for yourself is they're coming in already kind of knowing you a little bit, your demeanor, how you carry yourself, how you speak, because they've seen you in a video and they've learned from that video. So now when they come in, they get to see you face to face. They've got a little bit of excitement. They know you a little bit, and you can use that to your advantage to say, hey, let's dive in and talk about what you have going on specifically, because now I've given you the 30,000 foot view in that video and you've gotten to know me a little bit. Now let me spend some time and get to know you a little bit. Exactly. Because you didn't send me a video before you came into the clinic. And so I think that just from a patient experience, I would absolutely love that, because I'm already nervous. Like, I've already been given a diagnosis from someone else. Coming to you for a second opinion or coming to you from a treatment standpoint, I'm already nervous because of the diagnosis. If some of that weight can be taken off my shoulders, knowing that I'm going to talk to you about my position only and not everyone else who has the same thing that I've had, I think is just that's a fantastic patient experience. That, I mean, I hope I never get prostate cancer, but like, I mean, if I find myself in a situation like that, I would have a lot more peace of mind stepping into that situation than I would otherwise.
Yeah, that's so great to hear. We can talk about what shape this eventually took, but just to echo what you just said, WellPrep now exists and it's out in the world, and hundreds of doctors are using it, and it's in thousands of patients of visits every week. We actually decided to put a survey on it to collect data from patients so they can tell us how much they like it. Listen to this. 97% of patients feel like they understand their condition better because they reviewed the resources. 82% feel less stressed out before they visit the doctor. And 95, this is crazy, but awesome. 95% said they're more likely to recommend the doctor to friends and family just because they were sent these resources beforehand. They experience it like you've given them a gift.
Mm-hmm.
And it really is a gift. It's a gift because it says, listen, we've done this for you. These are vetted resources. Just review them. We got you. Our team has organized this for you. We can't wait to see you. There's some doctors that I tell this to, and there's a common question that we get is, well, if you're sending all the information, why would they even show up? Do people not show up because you've sort of revealed the cards before they? And it's the opposite. They can't wait to come in and hear what else you have to say.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, you use words like awesome, fantastic, great for those statistics. They do not surprise me at all. Just in my research of WellPrept, in the first 15 minutes that you and I have been talking, like it makes sense to me why you would have such high statistics in all of those areas, because it just makes sense. Like being well prepared even before they go under the knife, really. I mean, let me ask this question. How many times are you meeting with a patient before their treatment, before their surgery, anything like that starts? Is it just the one time where you're trying to cram it in, or
oftentimes it's one.
Oh, wow.
And I'm glad you point that out, because the way I look at this now, and I'm more and more convinced of this every single day, the face-to-face time that a doctor gets to have with the patient is very limited. And it is, we have to cherish that time. That is exalted time. Even if it's 15 minutes, nothing that happens in that time should happen except for what can only happen when you're face-to-face. If there's anything that could be accomplished outside of that face-to-face visit, it should be accomplished outside the visit. Mm-hmm. Let's leave that time for bonding, talking, developing trust, doing a physical exam, answering questions. Those are things that really can only be done face-to-face. And it's the heart of the doctor-physician relationship that has existed for hundreds of years. My hope is that that's never going to go away, and I don't think it will. But it's 2024. We have technology now that can help us remove the things that are just a waste of time if they clutter that visit between these two people who need to they need to develop a bond. And this is not only for surgeons. We have primary care doctors using this, many specialties. I would say especially for surgeons, though, because that trust that someone's placing in you to be willing to go under anesthesia and go under the knife, there's nothing quite like that. Mm-hmm. And so, it's a simple concept, but maybe that's what makes it so powerful. Let's just get our best resources in the hands of patients before they show up so that they can be primed for the best possible experience.
Absolutely. I'm a big fan of analogies, David, so I'm going to give you one that I thought of as you were just talking. And use this in your marketing materials if you want. I won't ask for any royalties.
Tell me.
From the point of diagnosis to the point of someone is now in remission, cancer-free, that's a journey. And so what you've done is you've essentially, think of like going on a family road trip with your, with your wife and kids. You've essentially sent them a checklist of here's all the things that you need to do before you hit the road. You need to check the tires. You need to fill up with gas. You need to make sure the oil is good. Make sure that all your blinkers work, that the car is all ready, that you've packed, right? Like all the things that are pre-travel things that you should do. And then you hit the road. You're the first destination, essentially. But
Yes.
like do all of these things before you get in the car and drive to me so that when you get to your first destination, you guys can jump out of the car and go do all the fun things that you want to do. And so I think that is a great way to think about, like, you wouldn't just get in your car and then drive down the road a little ways and be like, oh shoot, I should check the oil.
Yeah.
And then drive a little bit further and be like, man, I should probably, check the tires, make sure that, they're inflated well. Like you just wouldn't do that. You would do all the pre-prep. And so that's why it makes sense if you do that in that aspect of your life, a major journey, like going through a cancer diagnosis and treatment, why wouldn't you prepare like that also? And like having them put that ball in their court, I think some people might look at it and it sounds like they haven't, but I would think that some people would be like, I don't want to do homework. Like I'm 68 years old. I'm an engineer. I haven't been in school for, 45 years. Why do I need to do homework?
Yeah.
But then once they do it, it's like, man, I'm glad I did that. Cause now I can come in and talk to, Dr. Keynes, and I have all these deep questions and answers that I need that I can just ask him now versus, all right, I need to learn from step one what I've just been diagnosed with. They've already done the prep. I think that's fantastic.
Yeah, I super love that road trip analogy. And, if you do all that preparation, you're going to have a better trip. Mm-hmm. And, in medicine, it doesn't matter if it's a prostate cancer diagnosis or even just treating hypertension or diabetes or a weight loss journey or anything. The more you know, the more you're going to get out of the visit. But if we go to the, just to touch on what you do with financial planning for a second, if in your first meeting with a client, you're like collating information from all their accounts, it's a waste of time, They've got to probably fill out a form and tell you where all their money is located, what their assets are, what their liabilities are, get the full financial picture. If they don't do that beforehand, the first visit with you is going to be kind of a waste of time, right?
Yep. Yeah, one of the first things we ask is, hey, can you send me over your income statement and your personal financial statement? And many of them, I mean, you may know this as a doctor.
Yeah.
A lot of them don't have a lot of financial literacy just because you guys were not given that in medical school and in residency. A lot of them will say, well, I have like a balance sheet, or I can give you a list of all our accounts, but I don't have a personal financial statement or an income statement. So then we send them our Excel document, the template, say, fill this thing out, send it over to us. And then once we have it back, we'll find some time on the calendar to meet. And so it is preparation, because then we can come into that conversation and know, a lot of the basics of what they have going on, but it allows me to formulate questions about their situation that are way different than the 20 doctors I talked to before that. But that type of preparation, my questions can't arise unless I've seen all of that prep work first. So you made a great point there.
Yeah, I think the analogies are appropriate, and the connections between what you do and what I do. Any line of work where there's a lot of counseling involved, they're both similar. You need engagement on both sides. And to think that only one side is going to do all the work and you're going to have a good outcome is just not realistic.
I am super excited to introduce to you the Doctors and Dollars 5-Day Financial Challenge. I'm Mike Neubauer, I'm CEO of Grand Vision Companies, and I'm the one that you see on the Wealth Wednesday and Daily Dollar episodes with Nate. So Nate and I are partnering again to do something even more exciting, which is the 5-Day Challenge. We're taking the best of all of our episodes, all of our expertise and knowledge, and we're condensing it into an impactful and purposeful 5-day presentation, 1 hour per day, for 5 days, to give you everything you need to build that foundation for your financial future. So if you're looking to gain the pieces, you want those puzzle pieces and find out how they fit in your financial plan, head over to the Doctors and Dollars website, join us on the 5-day challenge. We're putting it together for free, so you got nothing to lose. We look forward to seeing you on the inside.
Just to get some clarity around WellPrept, because you had mentioned like, hey, it's really good for surgeons, but there's a lot of different specialties that are using it. It just started in urology. Is what you are giving to a physician, is it kind of, I don't want to say a blank template, but there is a customizable platform that
Yes.
if you have a neurosurgeon that wants to use it, that is different than a urology surgeon, like they can customize their WellPrept platform to meet their needs and their patients' needs. Is that accurate?
Yeah.
Tell me about that.
Yeah. So let me flesh that out a little bit.
Yeah.
So I told you about the experiment with the prototype with my urology friends, and at that juncture, I knew that this was something that would help other doctors' workflow and not just me.
Mm-hmm.
So I engaged with a software development team, and we developed a software product, which is a web application, and a new user can sign on, make their own account, choose their specialty, and then they're given a set of WellPrep pages. The basic idea is that each of the main conditions you see has its own page. So if you're in primary care, there's a page for hypertension, elevated cholesterol, smoking cessation, cancer screening in men, cancer screening in women, upper respiratory tract infections, urinary tract infection, etc. If you're a urologist, again, each specialty has a set of pages. And you asked about blank slate. What we discovered early on is if we gave doctors WellPrept as a blank slate, nobody used it.
Yeah, that doesn't surprise me.
Because it was just too daunting. Even though all they had to do was go on the web and copy and paste some links of their favorite stuff and upload their handouts, they did nothing. So what we did was, and this was a huge lift, we went around the web for each specialty. We're not completely done, but we have many of them covered. And we created a set of starter content, which we call seed content. Mm-hmm. All you have to do is pick the conditions that you see, almost like when you sign up for Spotify and it asks you what your musical tastes are. These bubbles pop up and say you just have to click the conditions that you see, and we pre-populate those pages with what we think is the best of the web, open source content, and it's multimedia, things like PDFs, of course, but also links to podcasts, YouTube videos, support group links, common medications, etc. Once a doctor sees that these pages are really ready to go to be shared with patients starting the next day, a lot of them will just keep it as is because it's stuff that you would be proud to share with your patient from the get-go. And then tweaking it, what I like to say is we would all rather be editors than authors.
Absolutely.
So if doctors are happy to take the leap of deleting one resource that they don't like and adding a couple that they do like, and then adding their favorite handout on whatever from their office and putting it on their WellPrep page. So our usage rate skyrocketed, and so that's the essence of what WellPrept is today.
What are some of the materials that you're sharing with patients on there? So if you have these different buttons, let's say it is a prostate cancer, the 68-year-old that you talked about earlier.
Okay, good question. Yeah.
Aside from that PDF, and maybe the video that you shared, like what have you seen other doctors are sharing that is a little bit more personalized for them that patients are really giving good feedback on?
All right. So first I'll tell you a little bit, a little bit about the base content for prostate cancer, just to give you an idea. We will share links to Prostate Cancer 101 podcasts, the NCCN and Prostate Cancer Foundation patient guides to prostate cancer. We'll link to a JAMA article about the importance of a plant-based diet, which has good data in prostate cancer, and some videos that are, again, open source from the Urology Care Foundation about prostate cancer grading and staging, things like that. Optionally, the cool things that I've seen users do, they'll create their own videos. And again, for doctors listening out there, you don't have to do this. This is optional, but I've seen people do some really creative things. For example, one of the coolest things is, patients will have to undergo prostate biopsy for elevated PSA. Driving to the hospital or surgery center and parking and finding the place to go is a source of anxiety for patients, right?
Mm-hmm.
This doctor, and again, I didn't suggest that he do this. He came up with this on his own. He held up his phone on his dashboard. He drove into the parking lot and he videotaped while he's talking. Okay, so here's the entrance into the parking lot. This is the best place to park over here. And then he walked with his phone. He said, this is the elevator bank over here, and you go up to the 4th floor. He went in the elevator in the video.
Genius.
He walked out of the elevator, and he said, then you're going to see Mary at check-in. Mary, say hello. And Mary waves. And then and he put this on his page, and every single patient who has prostate biopsy with him sees this video. And I'm telling you, it's a low-budget video. The video is shaky. It's not produced. Just one day he pulled out his phone. And he tells me that patients comment on this every day, that there was just one less thing that they had to worry about on the day of the biopsy. And just seeing the route and seeing the room and the waiting room, what made them feel okay about that whole experience. How incredible is that?
I mean, in the words of most Bostonians, that's wicked smart that he did that. Like, that's just because I mean, I've gone to big hospitals and things like that. That is tough. Like, that's just you almost go up 30 minutes sooner than you need to because you know that you have all these different steps to take just to get to the right floor in front of the right person. So that's really good.
Yeah. And it makes these are the things that now that I get up in the morning for. The WellPrept has inspired a lot of creativity out there, and it's making experiences for patients memorable and less stressful. Mm-hmm. And it really, I don't want to overstate it, but it in many cases improving patient care.
For sure. Can doctors do like a trial run of this just to see if they can get kind of that feedback where it's like, hey, I want to just test drive this thing for 30 days. I'll put some content out there. I want to see how my patients react to me before I really decide if this is something I want to do.
They can try it for 30 days for free. They can go to wellprept.com. WellPrept is a deliberate misspelling. It's WELLPREPT.com. WellPrept. And if it's a specialty that we don't have seed content for yet, people can still start with a blank slate. And our team gets really excited when somebody approaches us in a specialty we haven't covered yet. And we really lean in and try and help them find some good stuff to get on their pages. And that sort of new specialties have started with just one person who approaches it. We have a cardiologist who came to us, and this idea just resonated with him so much. I found all this stuff for him, and we got him going, and now cardiology is a thing. It always starts with one person.
Yep, absolutely. Thinking outside of the clinician, how does having an informed patient help, like the nurses, the NPs, colleagues of the doctor? Maybe the doctor's gone one day and their peers coming in to help. If there's a doctor using WellPrept, how does that help their staff having an informed patient before they come in? Wow,
what a wonderful question. We have a WellPrept Teams offering where we'll put every doctor and the APPs, the nurse practitioners and the PAs on. They will also get their WellPrept pages. So for the advanced practice providers, it can help directly because they have their own WellPrept pages. But what happens when a team starts using WellPrept, it's impossible to keep it a secret because people on the team find out about it because patients will bring it up. Thank you for sending me to this page. And so word spreads around that doctor. And the nurses love it. Now think about the difficult life of a nurse who a lot of times it's a little bit sad these days, but a lot of their day is eaten up by telephone triage. And they're fielding phone calls all day, putting out fires, people calling with questions. Some of those patients need to be directed to the ER. Some have questions that really are more suitable to being sent to a WellPrept page. So the nurses will say to the doctor, hey, listen, I'm just going to give you urology as an example because it's fresh in my brain. The nurses will catch wind of this and they'll say, can we please make a catheter care page? Because all day long we're teaching about how to take care of catheters and we're fielding phone calls. And so making a new page is as simple as clicking a button and naming the page. And we'll drop a video on catheter care in there and like a frequently asked questions PDF. And now phone calls go down. And when there is a phone call, the nurses have a single source of truth. Send this patient this link. They'll say, go to this page. Most of your questions will be answered. And if they're not, please call us back. And then usually there's no phone call back.
That is the definition of efficiency. Because I heard two things there. One, the volume of phone calls reduced, but the calls that do come in, the duration of those phone calls also is reduced.
Exactly.
So that's literally, that's the definition of leverage and efficiency. That's
it's sweet. Funny. We onboarded a group in, I'm forgetting what state now. I think it was Michigan. And we had an introductory call with the team. Now, this is one doctor with a very busy practice. And we were piped into a meeting room with at least 10 of her staff. This was a mixture of medical assistants, nurses, front office staff. We describe and introduce this concept that we're starting WellPrept for the practice. And I explained this, and I said to the group, do any of the nurses have any ideas on how they could use this concept? And immediately, a few of them said, oh my God, this is a direct quote, I have so many ideas right now. Can we please make a page for X? Can we please make a page for Y? Can we please make a page for Z? These are the top of mind. They could come up with a list of 5 or 6 things that consume their daily practice of things that they have to repeat over and over and over and over again. Sometimes it's instructive to pull from a different industry altogether to realize how silly this is. Microsoft Word or PowerPoint, if you have a problem, do you immediately get someone on the phone and ask them how to deal with your issue? No, they send you to a knowledge base with organized articles and you can find the answer. Can you imagine if Microsoft had, people fielding your immediate question from the get-go? I mean, they would just never do that.
Right. Especially if there's a challenge like, well, I can't quite see what you're seeing on your computer. Can you explain it to me? Like, that just sounds like a long, terrible phone call. Yeah,
that's right. So, listen, God bless the flexibility of and the generosity of people who are drawn to the medical field. I think that's part of why the bad situation exists. Out of the goodness of people's hearts, they feel obligated to do these sorts of repetitive explanations. God bless them for feeling that is appropriate. So I'm trying to break that cycle. Listen, don't feel bad. You don't have to explain these things all the time. Let's give people great resources to offload some of that work so that maybe the phone calls that you do get are really important and can only be answered by you.
It's way better.
Yeah.
Way better experience.
Yeah.
I got one more question on WellPrept and the processes behind it. Because I think it might be a question that the listeners have in their head. It's the when. When is this? When is their WellPrept page being sent to the patient? Is it the patient was referred? They're actively seeking a second opinion on their diagnosis. I know that as a patient in the past, you have to fill out your name and really schedule an appointment. You have to give your email. Is it once that appointment is scheduled, then there's an automation behind it that says, hey, thank you for scheduling your appointment. Before you come in, click this link, check out all these different tools and knowledge points. Is that when that's happening? Is right after booking, or is it, or is that a nurse conversation? Yeah, I'm trying to figure out just the when.
Okay, the when and the how. So the logistics. That's a great question. It depends on the specialty. I'll get that. I'll get to that in a minute. The best use case is if the patients can get this information before they arrive. Let's talk about new patients, predominantly new patients, not follow-up patients who already know you and already know the drill. New patients, the moment the appointment is booked, a HIPAA-compliant message is sent by email and SMS, and it arrives to the patient as an appointment reminder notification with educational materials attached, with some very friendly language that says something like, Dr. Smith would like you to review these resources before the appointment if you have time. Feel free to share them with your family. We look forward to seeing you. It sounds deliberately very much not like spam, because you have to understand people are being bombarded by spam constantly. So the open rates are over 60%, in some cases over 90%, which is crazy high. Right now, it's a manual process for the person doing the scheduling. In the next 6 months, we are working on EHR integration so that it will happen automatically. So that's on the way in. On the way out, we make these QR code grid handouts. It's a handout with all the QR codes for your pages. And people will keep a stack of 50 of them. And it's funny, this is a little bit interesting because I'm talking about digitizing everything. Yeah. But there is something nice about having a piece of paper. Now offices only need one piece of paper for all their educational handouts. And patients do like having this piece of paper in their hand to walk out with. Some of our doctors will also create shortcut phrases and drop a QR code and a link into their after visit summaries on the way out. So if you've ever received an after visit summary or a discharge summary, you know that they're not great. There's not a lot of good stuff in there. And here you're dropping in some really useful stuff. You're letting them go down your WellPrept rabbit hole, which is excellent.
Very cool. No, that definitely answers the question, because I think that'd be something that's important for somebody who's hearing this and they're like, okay, I got to check out WellPrept and what it's all about. But then how do I incorporate that into my practice or my clinic? How does that work? Yeah, knowing the when and the how is super important. Then it's the what, and it sounds like they get to create the what. You planted the seeds. No pun intended with it being seed material, but you've been able to. You've answered it all today. I mean, if I was a physician right now, I can't imagine that I would, stop listening to this episode and not go out and check it out, because it's just.
Yeah, another way to encapsulate this is you can control what a patient knows and when they know it, which sounds crazy. If you told me that 10 years ago, I would think, no, you can't do that. But now, yes, you can. You can control what a patient knows and when they know it to make your life easier and to prime them for a better experience.
Is that, I'm going to call it a limited belief. Is that limited belief that maybe was there 10 years ago because most doctors just know, hey, a patient receives a diagnosis, they're going to Google, right? They're just going to go Google it. They're going to go find it out on the plethora of things on the internet that could potentially be wrong. That's why that belief was there 10 years ago, where now you're grabbing the reins of that information gathering and saying, hey, here's trusted sources at your doorstep.
I continue to struggle with that question. Why is this not something that has been done already? And I think the answer is just this pervasive belief that the visit starts the moment the patient walks in the door. I think that's just how people conceptualize any interaction with the medical profession. So it just wasn't on people's radar that we might try to find ways to have that visit start the moment the appointment is booked. I mean, in a limited way, people did that. The first way people explored that is, let me see if we can get this patient to fill out this form before they show up. But it really stopped there in most cases. And so if there was a slightly outside the box idea here, maybe it was that. Maybe it was thinking beyond the physical part of the meeting and imagining how it could be extended virtually.
Yeah. I mean, it really comes down to, in its simplest form, just putting yourself in the patient's shoes and how they are feeling coming into that first meeting. Like, if you just take everything out of it except the emotional side of what that physician or what the patient is feeling, like, just think about that emotion and, like, how do you, I don't know if I want to say counteract, but at least compensate for that feeling. That's all you're really
Yeah.
doing.
You're absolutely right. Along those lines, because this is just makes my day so much, let me just share 3 quotes with you. These are direct, unedited, actual quotes from people who filled out one of our surveys as they were perusing these WellPrep pages. Here's the first one. Now I don't have to search Google. What a huge relief. And this is way better than anything I would have found on my own. I mean,
That's a good one.
Puts a big smile on me. The next one. Simple. This is so great. I wish all my doctors did this. And then the last one, I find it nice to see what is presented by the physician. Makes me more at ease to see him.
100%. I mean, that last one is super important because it makes you, that is a quote from a patient saying, like, I know my doctor better. Like, if a doctor puts out, for lack of a better word, just really poor material prior to that visit, that patient's going to have a preconceived notion, like, this guy kind of half-asses it, right? He just doesn't, this is not very good. But if they see, the WellPrep platform, it has all these different multi-mediums of ways to consume the material. You've put yourself up a rung on that ladder in that patient's eyes, because not only do they feel well prepared, they're like, this guy knows his stuff. I know what I'm stepping into.
It paints the doctors in a good light, and the excellent doctors that everyone is already. It puts you forth as someone who's organized and who is looking out for the patient's best interest. I think you said it best when you said, if you just put yourself in the patient's shoes and ask yourself, what would the best experience look like? I'm biased now, but I think this is one piece of it.
Mm-hmm. I think you've done it. I think it's very cool. WellPrept, WellPrept.com. Love that.
All right.
Before I let you go, I would be doing a disservice to the entire urology community, the surgical community, if I didn't ask you this question, because I mentioned in the bio, you're a very well-decorated robotic surgeon, which I think is super cool. So 2-part question. Where did the love of robotics come from? At what stage in your career did that come from?
Yeah.
And then 2, I want you to talk about some of the advancements that have come about in the last 10 years that have completely changed your approach to surgery.
Wow, that's great. Those are great questions. So my love for robotic surgery. Every surgical specialty in the late 90s and early 2000s experienced a massive conversion from open surgery with big cuts to laparoscopic surgery. So you could think of it like operating through keyholes with chopsticks. And It just so happens that the urology surgeries we do are pretty complicated, and they're in tight spaces. So when we operate in the pelvis, the space we're working in is about the size of a bar of soap. And to learn laparoscopy, which I did at that time, was so hard. I mean, it was really one of the most difficult technical exercises to go through. And then all of a sudden, robotic surgery came along, where you could sit down and just with your fingers manipulating joysticks, do these really complicated movements that previously took years to be able to do laparoscopically. So I fell in love with robotics in 2006. I was one of the first surgeons in New England to get my hands on this surgical robot, and it was like instant relief. It doesn't matter if it's WellPrept or a surgical device, anything that makes our life easier will be adopted. And that's what happened with robotics. So it now became a question of just deciding what I wanted to do, but then executing it was not technically difficult anymore. And I never looked back after that. So that's my love. Now, what am I excited about over the last 10 years?
What's that one? It doesn't necessarily, let's say it's a robotic surgery, but maybe it's also just a certain technique of surgery that's come about that when it's time to perform that, you like lock in. You're like, I love doing this. This is challenging. But it wasn't something that was around, a couple decades ago.
Well, here's what pops into my mind. For me, the most incredible advance over the last 10 or 15 years has not specifically been a surgical advance. It has been how the world has gotten smaller. What I mean by that is when I first started as a medical student or even in college, the only way for surgeons to see what other surgeons were doing around the world was once a year when you descended on some conference that you eagerly awaited an international conference just to see what other surgeons were doing in the world. And now I go on Twitter, I go on YouTube, I go online, and daily surgeons will post little video clips and tips and tricks. And it's almost like these national meetings are no longer as important for me. Every day I get some kind of tidbit, little pearl, little improvement from a colleague halfway across the globe that I can implement the next day in my operating room. And I teach residents in the operating room. They'll say, "How you didn't do that last week, Dr. Keynes? Where did you think to do this technique?" And I say, I'm not ashamed to say it, I saw it online. This guy in Korea is doing this. And so what a world to live in now. What an amazing world to live in where that can be the case. Yeah. So to me, that is just, I learn the most from watching colleagues. And the world is small now. That's what I love the most.
That's very cool. I mean, I'll even tag on to that. I'm not a surgeon. I think everyone knows that. Do I know enough now after 50 some episodes of a podcast that I could go to medical school? Maybe. I don't know. We'll see. But I will say a majority of my connections, like on LinkedIn, are doctors of several different specialties. My searches on YouTube as I'm doing research for this podcast, as I'm researching, we have a new family that wants to join our Grand Vision family office. It's like, okay, here's what specialties that doctor has. I'd like to learn a little bit more what they do. You go on my YouTube or my LinkedIn and you start scrolling, it is like surgeries, there's blood, there's all these different medical stuff. Like I told someone the other day who's not in the medical field, I told him, I was like, if you got onto my LinkedIn, didn't know what my profession was, and you just started scrolling my feed, you would think I'm a doctor just for all of the things. And you would jump back because you'd be like, oh gosh, there's a heart beating on that screen. So I think that's very cool. I agree with you that the interconnection of the world now is incredible. I'll even advance that to say it was all in print, right? You could read what other doctors were doing around the world in something that they publish. Right. Now there's videos, there's talks, there's TED Talks, right? There's all of this information that can be digested so quickly. That's not just reading. And I think that's very cool too. And makes me wonder what 20 years from now looks like. I feel like at some point we'll be able to put on virtual reality goggles and be like, hey, do you want to go watch Dr. Keynes do a prostate exam or a prostate surgery? You can be in the surgery room and see how that works. And maybe that's just a class in medical school that you can take.
No, that is really happening. And you're right. The pace of advancement in that regard, the platforms already exist for surgeons to pipe into operations as they happen in real time to give a consultative opinion or to help on an operation from across the world. So you're right. It is an exciting time to be alive.
Very cool. Well, I'm excited for WellPrept to grow even more. You said it's hundreds of users at the moment. I can't wait until there's hundreds of thousands of users. And you're on Forbes magazine and you're absolutely changing the world. So I appreciate you taking some time out of your day to talk to me, and I look forward to when our paths cross again in the future.
Thanks, Nate. This was a lot of fun. I appreciate it.
Take care.